Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our FIRECOAT Resilient webinar. And I wanted to say thank you for registering for this very, very important event. I'm Kristy McSweeney from the Sky News Network. I want to say that we are using the chat facility. We do encourage you to utilise it. When we open for Q&A, we will be selecting questions from that chat facility instead of having people jump in. So do use it and we'll select questions from there for our panellists. You're all here to hear from a range of experts that all have a significant contribution to make to the public discussion around fire risk mitigation, what's occurring in the insurance industry to remodel environmental sustainability risk with fire, and of course floods have been in the national public conversation. And we also will talk about the impact on our tourism sector and cost of owning these assets as more and more houses are built and more consumer assets perhaps and tourism assets are built in fire zones around Australia. So the experts we've assembled here today include Craig Lapsley. Craig will be familiar to many of you. Craig has had a 30-year career in emergency management in Victoria and New South Wales, including as Deputy Chief Officer of the Victorian Country Fire Authority and Victoria's first and only Fire Services Commissioner. In 2014, he became the Commissioner of Victoria's Emergency Management. Since that time, Craig has taken a role in resilience advisory and holds director positions with a number of companies and institutions around Australia. He has been at the centre of bushfire inquiries, playing a key role as part of a government agency. So looking forward to his insights. James Telford is Chief Executive Officer at GSA Insurance Brokers. James leads Australia's premier insurance brokerage for businesses and households in Australia, seeking to navigate difficult insurance issues with large insurance. A significant part of his business is working with large tourism asset owners as well to navigate these outcomes around fire and environmental insurance claims. James is going to give us some insights around the repricing model and structure that's occurring in insurance as insurance seeks to be an interface, I suppose, between people who are battling these issues and as fire and risk becomes more and more prominent in an urban sprawl planning scenario that we have now in Australia. Ben Hughes-Brown, and Ben is joining us from the early morning of London. Thank you, Ben, for your commitment. Ben is the Chief Technology person of FIRECOAT, and Ben also is a renowned fire safety engineer. He established Australia's first multi-function private fire-saving testing and research facility. He is the link between communicating fire engineering and building code issues to asset owners, and he'll give us some key insights on those challenges around how development and asset is dealing with fire mitigation risk with technologies like FIRECOAT and others. Justin Rooney joins us today. Justin is the Managing Director of Flame Security International and has developed FIRECOAT. The development of the paint technology FIRECOAT has happened in Australia, but also in a world-first collaboration for Australian fire paint technology with University of Southern California, Berkeley, and University of New South Wales, as well as commercial interests. FIRECOAT is fire risk mitigation technology in paint, and it's proving to be part of the environmental solutions package as governments and tourism sectors around the world look at how we can mitigate against fire risk. The success of the technology is at work in Victoria's high country in the Falls Creek Ski Resort and helps them with their challenges in fire protection. Prior to developing FIRECOAT, Justin had a long banking career and he spent extensive time in California recently working with CAL FIRE and Californian authorities as they recover from the bushfires that they've faced in the US. And we're very happy to announce that FIRECOAT has achieved a large retail distribution deal through the United States with Ace Hardware, which is essentially the Bunnings equivalent in the US. So a great Australian technology making fantastic trade and export inroads into the US at such a critical time that it's needed. And with that, before we open up to have a few words from our panelists, we're going to play a short video. We'll go for just over a minute, and you'll hear from the outgoing CEO of Falls Creek Resorts, Stuart Smythe, about how FIRECOAT is at work at the resort in Falls Creek.
We're at the Falls Creek Ski Patrol hut on the top of the mountain, and we're applying FIRECOAT to a level of Bell 40. We're applying FIRECOAT exterior to protect the hut from the imminent threat of bushfire.
It's an innovative Australian solution to a problem that's ever increasing for us here at the resort. We're always trying to mitigate risk, and this gives us a viable solution to mitigate against the ever-present and very obvious risks of fire in the resort. Whatever we can do to mitigate the risks of being in an alpine resort and show the insurers that we're taking every step possible to reduce that risk will help hopefully in the either moderation or escalation of insurance premiums.
FIRECOAT is very easy to apply. It can be brushed, it can be rolled, it can be sprayed. FIRECOAT can be applied to brick, render, aluminium, steel, timber, concrete and plasterboard. You need 2 coats of FIRECOAT exterior to achieve a Bell 40 rating. FIRECOAT, when affected by fire, forms an intermittent char layer that protects the substrate beneath.
Being so isolated, in the event of a bushfire attack or an ember attack, we'll be looking to protect this village and the essential infrastructure. So FIRECOAT gives us the opportunity to buy it time until such time as we can get there and defend it ourselves.
Real technology at work in real places that really need it. Justin, that was an incredible way of explaining FIRECOAT and how this technology plays a solutions role as us in Australia, and you've just been in the US, mitigates against the risk of fire. Can you take us through the FIRECOAT journey so far across Australia and the United States?
So thanks, Kristy, and thanks all for attending today. Let's hope those alpine gods give us, and no doubt the Vale Resorts Group, the ski season we're all hoping for this year. Now, FIRECOAT, Kristy, I think it's a success story for Australia. It's one that the team's really proud of. It was actually born from the tragic Grenfell Tower cladding fire in London in 2017. And then I guess the devastating 2019 and 20 bushfires here in Australia that impacted so many people. It wasn't just homes lost, it was the damage done to the flora, the fauna, and the ongoing impacts on infrastructure and business generally. And that's a story we hear all around the world, how ever present the risk is, but also the after effects. So I guess the horror of these events and the lack of clear answers from things like the Royal Commission really inspired our mission to better mitigate these risks through using smart technology, unique science, and developing key partnerships across the globe. The journey is a real fusion of, I guess, innovative thinking and the collaboration of intellectual, scientific, and industry firepower. But what also incorporates is crucial private and very patient investment capital and important partnerships along the road with academia and government agencies. So in our view, a global problem needed a global solution. So it has taken some time to do that. But the result is it's a really unique suite of award-winning, Australian invented, sovereign manufactured, and globally patented technologies now. We've done a lot of rigorous testing and certification over the last 5 years. And now these solutions are actually reaching communities worldwide that have the common threat of fire. So I guess thanks to the efforts of your previous CEO, Stu Smythe, there at Falls Creek, he's an ex-work colleague of mine actually. Our work now includes areas like Falls Creek, and you saw that in action there. You guys face unique bushfire challenges. You've prioritised your safety. You've acknowledged the environmental vulnerability that you have there, and the real need for better insurance against these sort of growing risks that we face every year now. These risks are not yours alone, as Kristy touched on. I've seen it in California recently. It's happened in other tourism areas like Mount Selwyn. They had their own problems a couple of years ago. Jasper in Canada last year was almost lost. We all saw the fires in Lahaina in Hawaii. You wouldn't expect a place like that to catch fire. But these recent fires in, also places like Napa and the Pacific Palisades, it really does show the demand for these fire resilience solutions and how much they're growing. It's obvious to us, probably not so the rest of the community, but water alone, and Craig will probably touch on this as well, water alone is no longer sufficient. It's not an effective defence. There is a need out there for forward-looking and environmentally sensitive solutions, and that's what we're passionate about, and that's what we've been working on ever since. So I guess to set the framework for what we're going to be talking about today, we live in a world full of flammable, toxic materials. Fire risk is ever present in our homes, across our cities, in the regions, and unfortunately, the bulk of these fires are actually caused by our human activity. That risks, as Kristy touched on, compounded by this urban expansion that we're seeing. They call it in California the wildland-urban interface, and as cities and populations spread out further into this, I guess, the hinterland, these risks actually grow proportionally with that. So climate-related impacts are also having an impact as well. We've got these added threats now. A lot of these fires are started by power lines dropping to the ground. I noted that in Victoria, a couple of the solar farms have been shut down recently due to fire risk. Wind turbines can cause them. We see on the news every night lithium batteries, e-bikes, all these sorts of things adding to the familiar hazards that we generally see, like campfires, cigarettes, and things like lightning strikes. So all these issues present significant risks to the environment, our communities, our key infrastructure, the industries out there, Indigenous, heritage assets, all these important things. So a lot of these are irreplaceable. So that's what we're super passionate about, is protecting. I will have a chance to talk about my experiences in Altadena and Pacific Palisades later in the Q&A if you're interested. But I think the key out of my time there and talking to the officials was that they've acknowledged the need to rebuild with stronger technology. They noted the need to change building codes. They noted the need for advanced building materials to be incorporated into that process. And they also, I think, really importantly, recognise that every dollar they invest in fire resilience, they acknowledge that yields near a fourfold return. So the importance for the economy and just generally the community is investing in this type of technology is key. So I guess just to wrap it up, our first FIRECOAT product is now, we're proud to say, is featured at Falls Creek. It's the world's first fully certified Balfour rated coating. We're super proud of that. It's been proven time and time and again to survive these extreme fire conditions. And I'd encourage you to have a look on our website and see the videos where we attack these assets with flamethrowers, and all the testing procedures are featured there. It's now available in Australia and the US, as Kristy said, which we're really happy about. But this is just the beginning of a range of innovative products that we've been developing over the last 5 to 6 years, all to address this fire-related and insurance-driven challenges. And I just wanted to say, lastly, that we're really grateful for the support of the Falls Creek community in getting us up and going in this project.
Thanks, Justin. That's a great overview, and what an incredible success for an Australian-made product to have collaboration with such an innovative university institution in the US with UC Berkeley, and now leading retail into the United States. I wanted to bring in Craig, who perhaps can give us some insights into emergency management and how government looks at solutions for emergency management, not just during and post emergencies, which you've had extensive experience with, Craig, but more for planning and preparation, ensuring resilience. And we have these technologies like FIRECOAT and other technologies being developed with innovation, with science. Is government looking at these technologies as part of the solution? Are we there yet with public policy?
Thanks, Kristy, and hi to all. Great opportunity to talk about the things that really do matter. And I think you've done extremely well to introduce the product. But I suppose the question is now, how do we get it used and used effectively? So from that, one of the drivers is the fact that the world has changed and is changing even more, with more intense, more frequent, longer fire seasons, broader impacts. And you can see that, people that think about bushfire think about the bush, and it is related to the bush. But the Palisades fire in America was house to house for kilometres, well, in their terms, miles, and it reached to places that you wouldn't have imagined would have reached there. So it was house to house for hours on end due to horrific wind speeds and ember attack. So, and that's happened in Australia before. So the Canberra fires of a decade or more ago were exactly that, Victoria and New South Wales. So it's not new to us, but we've got to come up with better solutions. And obviously this is one of those. And governments have been, pretty strong, particularly after fires, to say, where's the new technology and how do you do it? But I think now we've got something that I think is a bit underestimated, in the sense that people have probably seen paints before and said, oh yeah, what's a paint do? Will it protect? And people, I think, naturally go that it needs to be the material itself, not what we coat the material with, to be the protector. So I think this takes us to another level, to give structural protection. And the paint that I've looked at, and the fact that it was signed off by Australian standards and met Bell 40, was one of the key aspects to me. Once I realised, and the team was able to prove to me what they've gone through in testing regimes, both in an academic sense and a practical sense, but then put a solution together. Because it's one thing to get elements of a solution, it's another thing to put a solution on the table. I think that was a turning point for me, without a doubt. And I won't go through the standards it's passed, but the fact it's achieved Bell 40 certification is a big step to make sure that there's a solution that can be used. But again, it needs to be applied correctly, maintained. But the team have worked that through, of, that it's got a 10-year life. If it's attacked by a fire, yes, it needs to be scraped down, but you can reapply and all of those things. So it's got a practical use. The biggest thing for me, though, and you mentioned the word resilience before, this is about building resilient communities. Because if we have a fire pass through and we lose where we live and what are the belongings of where we live, that's where we get totally disconnected communities that then have mental health problems, have dysfunctional communities or neighbourhoods. It leads to so many other consequences that are just not about the fire. So whatever we do at government level, whatever level of government or agencies, fire departments, the building commissions of the states, to have solutions that can be applied is one of the critical things, to say that we're going to give greater level of protection, and we're going to see more buildings withstand the onslaught of fire, whether people are there or not. And that's the critical thing, that there's a tendency now that, certainly in Australia, that if you're well prepared to stay defend, and there's also other parts of the day you say people shouldn't be there because it's just a fire of significant consequences. If you go to the States, so the USA are very strong about evacuation. Like, they will take full communities out and leave structures to stand basically by themselves. So this is where this product starts to give a solution that really does start to give a bit of a game changer in the way in which it's done. Now, admittedly, you need to look at other solutions as well. So a paint solution, you can't paint your windows, but you certainly can paint a great part. Or if you've reached certain levels in the Bell certification, the paint might be the next bit that gives you that next level. So it might take you from Bell 29 to Bell 40. So there's a practical application. One of the challenges, Kristy, you asked about government is, I think, the fire services, like the key, the agencies themselves, the fire engineers that certify, building inspectors, local government that have responsibilities in that space have to be a group that are able to get to see this, play with it, understand it, because they are the people that ultimately certify the building. So it's one thing to say, I'm going to go down to Bunnings and buy it and put it on, but I need to work with other people, particularly at local government and fire agencies, to be able to get that certification and get the application. And it's also, I think, in a neighbourhood discussion, because if I've got my house at Belforty and I've gone maybe above the level I need to, but the house next door's done little or doesn't maintain, the house next door is going to be the one that puts the pressure on my house. So to have a neighbourhood discussion is also important, that it's not isolated buildings. There's an approach that you can harden up these buildings and get a higher level of protection, which increases your resilience by having a discussion at that community, at that neighbourhood. So there's a little bit more in this. I think the certification process, the products there, I just think there's an opportunity to engage better with fire departments, and I know some of them are on today, fire engineers, and certainly local government that have got that certification process. But it's in the market, it's a practical solution, it's got the level, and I think the other thing that we shouldn't underestimate is what CAL FIRE is doing, and they've done tests where they've had a building not coated and a building coated and run fires through them, and they've seen a dramatic difference of outcome. So some of that testing, it's in some of the videos and information, but it's not just, it's made in Australia, but it's certainly been taken up and tested strongly because of the Berkeley connection, but also with CAL FIRE and US Forest Service to a lesser degree. So that's important. But I suppose in closing, it's a viable solution, it's a practical solution, it's in the market. You'd suggest it's a cost-effective solution. And it's certainly an Australian-made solution for Australia. So I think there's a little step to go yet with those key players being more involved. But what I've seen, it's a credible, viable outcome that is fantastic.
Craig, just one more question on the levels of government. Obviously, Australia has an extreme level of government compared to other jurisdictions, and the US has two really in terms of fire and emergency resilience, state government and the federal oversight. Australia has that crucial local government interface, which is the key people and the key executioner of emergency resilience in communities. I know Australia has a relationship in fire and emergency management and aerial firefighting, perhaps with Canada. Is a product like this, and is Canada using these type of technologies, or is it just Australia and the United States?
No. So I spend time in South America as well. So Chile, Argentina, their fire risk is huge. Canada, US, the same. But you've now got a global issue of fire, and you've seen in the UK. Look at Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Turkey. There's a group of countries through there that are, in some cases, has the same level of risk as what Australia and California's had for many years. So it's a broader issue, and I think as we see, and I always say you don't have to be a believer in climate change, but the fact is that the climate is changing, and that's where we're getting these more intense fires, more frequent fires, and longer seasons. So, and when you do that, you're reaching further into the community. So whether it's in Ringwood, Melbourne, or Penrith in Sydney, you're sitting on the edge of these bushfire areas. And I think the biggest learning to me out of the recent fires, the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire, was, there was fire reached into places that people would not have imagined that fire would have burnt houses down, but it was all house to house. So the protecting of the building, the structural protection of buildings is critical, because we're going to see fire push into the urban interface further and further. And like I said, Canberra, 15 years ago now, was exactly that. Canberra was burnt on the edges, but it was a kilometre in from the bush that was still burning. So the protection of the structure is critical. And not only that, you take yourself away from the bushfire environment and think about Grenfell, which was a fire down in London, the metropolitan part of London, that had huge impacts and is still being reported now. Well, some of those fires were, the first cladding fire that was reported was in Melbourne, in the Dockland. So a paint you might not paint the whole building, but you may be able to use paint to put parts of it in, that you're painting certain parts. But this paint, the way I've understood it, is timber or steel. So it's not just a timber coating; it's an all materials coating to start to better protect the building from fire impact and fire extinction. So so it's there. You're right about government in Australia. Local government and state governments are the two key. Now, we shouldn't discount the federal government, but where the true responsibility lies local government in fire responsibility, but also the building code, and then you've got the state planning requirements. So those level of governments need to be engaged and have the opportunity to understand a new product and an innovative product of how it would be utilised, not necessarily in totality, but in supplementary to the buildings. And the other one, just in closing for me, don't underestimate the outbuildings. Like a shed that's an outbuilding in a bushfire environment could be the thing that catches fire and then burns the main structure down. So, building's a building. So the protection of all buildings is a critical part of the puzzle in when we're dealing with bushfire.
Craig, we're both Victorian, and you mentioned the Victorian cladding issues and the building codes, and of course, I recall your work with the Victorian government and the CFA, as well as in New South Wales. So I can speak to you all day, but we'll bring James Telford in from GSA Insurance Brokers, who Craig did touch on. As our cities and urban sprawl and planning decisions are made further and further into geography that was previously considered bushland, I suppose, and infrastructure continues to expand. Insurance, to meet that change in demography, is having to come to perhaps experience a new remodelling framework in insurance, which of course is difficult to navigate for household owners, difficult to navigate for tourism infrastructure owners. James, can you talk to us a little bit about the insurance challenges? They are live in public debate at the moment, particularly with floods, but also with fire.
Sure, thanks, Kristy. Look, I think it's fair to say that Australia have a few issues to counter at the moment. In terms of insurance, we're dealing with cyclone, we're dealing with flood, dealing with flood at the moment. And fire is obviously a key one as well. So it's a difficult environment at the moment. I think similar to flood, we keep building in flood zones, and similar to bushfire, we keep building in rural areas where there's a risk of bushfire. So I think the insurance industry as a whole is struggling at the moment with trying to work out how to find a solution for it. And hearing from Craig that there's still an understanding how not only is there a product to protect these assets, there's also the way that it's applied, and if one person does it and the neighbour doesn't, for example, that increases the risk. Insurance industry is all about risk mitigation at the end of the day, and they are trying to keep up with new initiatives. They're not quite there yet in terms of this product. It's something that we're pushing and wanting insurance companies to listen and understand, and that takes time. And I'm confident over time the insurance industry will change their view. At this stage, from a fire perspective, insurers are struggling with modelling around fire protection through bushfire. Rates are increasing across the board, and it's important to note rates are increasing from a residential point of view, not just because of bushfire, but because of poor loss history over time. And so, on top of bushfire exposure, even if you're living in the centre of Sydney, 200 metres from a tree, your rates will be going up 5 to 10% anyway. So then, in addition to that, you're unfortunately getting loaded with increase in building costs as well. And so residents, homeowners are really struggling with the insurance side of protecting their property before even bushfire comes into it. In terms of the market from bushfire, again, they haven't really, they're not applying significant changes due to bushfire, but what they are doing, if it's in a typical bushfire zone, most insurers will walk away from the option to quote. And I think that's where we're really struggling at the moment, as insurance companies no longer provide capacity to provide protection on homes. It then limits it to a smaller number of insurers. And then when there's a smaller number of insurers to provide protection, costs go up. we have got insurers out there that it's sort of a moral risk as well, in terms of providing partial cover. So, remembering there's commercial markets, there's residential markets, but there's also direct markets and broked markets. So in the broking world on prestige homes, all the prestige home insurers are not providing bush cover. And so, and that might be any home over $2.5 million, $3 million in replacement value. So they're not even looking at providing cover. And that, coming back to that moral risk, they're not even providing cover for for all risks except bushfire, because then that presents an issue should a fire happen down the track. So, that then drives pricing up. It then drives customers to potentially reduce their building values to open up the market and be able to access other markets to reduce premiums. So it's a bit of a test and see at the moment. We've had a number of clients trying to insure their assets, and we, depending on where they are, we could go through 40 markets without finding any success for them. So there's probably a lot of clients out there who don't have cover. There'll be some that have cover placed through different markets, potentially London, which means that it's a significant increase in premium. So it's a big issue from a residential point of view. From a commercial point of view, again, insurers are still providing bushfire protection, but significant deductibles or excesses, and also limiting cover. So it really does depend on the style of the risk. It certainly is a complicated environment to provide the right protection, and I can see that clients are getting particularly frustrated with it. It's we've all seen the devastating losses that have come out of bushfire, and certainly the LA ones, seeing that they can spread so quickly. And as Craig said, they're a kilometre or a mile away from any tree line anyway. So very hard to protect against. I think we'll continue to see increasing pricing through the market. But from an insurance perspective, as an insurance broker, we're hoping that Justin's product, can get accepted by all insurers. Insurers want to mitigate risk, and it's no different in our eyes to a sprinkler head or fire blankets or whatever it might be. If you can find a way to protect an asset that will provide further protection than not having it, surely should drive premiums down. So that's our hope, that this product gets accepted by all insurers, and I know that it's been accepted by FM, which is a massive hurdle to clamber over in the first place. So our hope, and with Steadfast's help and through further education, insurers will get on board and provide the relief that our clients and every person that owns a property in bush affected areas can access.
It's an unusual trick of the market where the most prestige properties are having the most trouble finding people to service their needs. Very much usually the other way around with most aspects of commercial interest. I wanted to say to everybody on the chat too that GSA Insurance Brokers have a fantastic blog site on their website where they talk about current issues, and they have a lot of case studies of major projects and major issues in fire and emergency risk that they've dealt with. So thank you, James, for giving us some of those insights. And I do encourage everybody to look at their website. I personally found it really informative. So from a marketing person, you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you. I wanted to bring in Ben Hughes-Brown here. We've had both Craig and James talk on issues with building codes and working with developers. Ben, again, thank you so much for your early morning time from London. You've had a long career as a fire engineer. You're also a representative of FIRECOAT technology. You work with councils, large infrastructure developers, people in that urban environment around fire technology and fire risk, and communicating those issues to them about what technologies to use, what's deficient in the building code and how to meet it perhaps, or how to exceed it in terms of giving them protection. What are some of those conversations you have with asset owners, with councils, with developers in that urban environment around fire risk?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. And yeah, nice early start here. And as highlighted, London is not immune from fire. We certainly see the origins back from the Great Fire of London, 1666, where we're dealing with almost identical situations that happened in California, where we have buildings in close proximity that really put the pressure on the adjacent building. The adjacent building doesn't have the ability to withstand that level of fire impact, and therefore you get that spread occurring. And I guess that really leads to that aspect of what we see is that people want to live comfortably. They want to live in their houses. They're not cheap. They're not easy to construct, and there's not enough of them. We have such a beautiful country in Australia, and to engage with the bush environment is critical for our way of life, and we shouldn't exclude that by living in concrete jungles. So in order to do that, we need to have that resilience, and there are ultimately two ways in which buildings can be protected: through active measures. These are sprinklers, fire hose reels, hydrant systems, fire brigade response. The thing is, active systems can't always be relied upon. You can't guarantee you're going to have the fire service standing at your front door waiting for that fire front to come. So we have to lend ourselves to passive, which are physical protection mechanisms. We see solid construction of brick being a very solid pathway in resisting, but it's not always available to us, and certainly is not always a sustainable option for certain construction with that. So lightweight construction, having the ability to have cost-effective buildings that certainly can then also have the insulation and all the amenities that we would like to live comfortably. With that, we need to then be able to have that level of protection, and I provide a great level of support to the FIRECOAT and Flame Security International on how to achieve that. I have got an extensive career in fire protection and looking at the fire safety aspects for over 25 years so far. And certainly, the ability to have this protective paint, which we've certainly used in industrial scenes of commercialized buildings for a long time, but to bring that to an affordable mechanism for your homeowners and the level of performance that it achieves is fantastic. And we've certainly seen the testing that has occurred on that front. So putting a paint onto a building and having that ability for it to provide that level of resilience. And a key factor is that, and as we heard previously, that the structural protection is critical. You get a fire going into the structural components of your house, that's it, game over. And it causes a huge amount of damage. And this is the way up, certainly from the insurance front, is that the damage and the amount that is needing to be rectified can be quite huge. So, an ability to stop that, or certainly to prevent that for a sufficient time to either allow the fire front to go past or for the fire to extinguish and you're left with the residual, then that's the goal. And that's exactly what we've got here with FIRECOAT. So the other factor is that close proximity fires tend to be the critical impact. Now, you'd have a fire front come through, and that will bring it strong winds, high temperature, embers, and in some cases direct flame impact. And so this is what needs to be fought against. So the FIRECOAT paint can actually provide your wall system with that barrier, so it doesn't ignite. That it provides that shielding, and the paint will expand with that heat. And it's I like to term it as that it's the pillows instead of in a car accident you've got safety pillows there. This is a pillow system for your house. It'll expand through the intumescence, which is an expansion factor, and provide a physical barrier, and it'll give you that time to absorb the fire impact, whether it be direct flame impact, whether it be ember attack, whether it be high temperature. And so even if you had a tree in close proximity, if you had your garden shed in close proximity, and these provide ongoing larger fire effects, that the paint, and the systems that fire FSI provide can really assist in stopping that from getting inside your building on that front. And it's all about having mechanisms that will provide protection when there is no physical, so no active option. Whether you then won't have to rely on yourself and say, well, I'm going to stay here and protect my building. You have other mechanisms that have been proven to work quite well. And when dealing with councils, building owners, other certifiers or surveyors, it's all about the approval process and having that confidence. And the paint has gone through an extensive range of testing. It was tested at the former Warrington Fire in the Australian certified bushfire test arrangement in a very large 3-meter furnace that was that absolutely pummeled it with equivalent levels of radiation and direct flame impact during the testing, and it survived extremely well on that front, and had a lot more capacity to protect than what was tested. And so with that, it really comes down to that this forms a pathway of compliance through the deemed to satisfy provisions. You don't need performance solutions. You don't need to have additional rules, regulations come in play, because you're dealing within a compliance arena. It's all about then making sure, as our previous speakers have spoken about, making sure it's applied properly, that you follow the instructions, and that you have the checks and balances that come into play, and then present that certification on top of that to the authorities from there. So it also takes away a lot of the regulatory burden that people certainly feel with living and trying to build in a complex bushfire space.
Thank you, Ben, and thanks to all of our panelists. I know that I'm certainly far more informed, and you're all bringing unique expert insights to the conversation. We wanted to open the floor up now to Q&A, and thank you so much for contributing your questions in the chat. And they have been forwarded to me, so I think I'll just read the question out, and then whoever I think has the most expertise in it, some of them are a bit discernible and some of them are a bit more obvious, so I can call you out. If you could jump in if it's an area. Craig, I think this one might be for you. The question is, even in areas with BAL 40, CFA assessments and councils are nervous about approving planning permits. How will CFA and council planning teams be educated about this product? Even though it meets Australian standards for BAL 40, planning permits can still be refused due to the high fire risk. And this person has gone on to say that they'd love to see some kind of cladding for polywater tanks to make them fire resistant. So could you unpack that for us? Because I do agree with the question. Yep. Thank you for submitting it.
Absolutely. And that's the sort of question that probably is extremely helpful to take the next step. So I'm totally independent to the company, so I don't know what the company's been doing. However, I think there is the education. I think it's an engagement process with fire engineers, local municipality, building inspectors and those managers, and including the fire department, so CFA and others, to make sure that they are aware of what a new innovative product is and how it would be applied, and therefore how do we get certification in a practical application that they are dealing with all the time. So there's certainly the product background, the understanding of the product. I think now it's the discussion about how it's applied, how it's maintained, what are the requirements around that I'd suggest there would need to be some workshops, and probably to take it the next step from here, that it's a hands-on workshop that people can really get into, understand what the passive capabilities are of this in a fire suppression, in a fire protection sense, and therefore the application in the broader. It's interesting once you get in there about, and I used before the outbuilding of that could be the weak part of the puzzle. So the outbuilding's the bit that burns and it puts pressure on the main building, exactly those poly tanks. Yeah, the water supply, the protection of the water supply is one of the critical things. So how do you protect it? It's probably better not to be a poly tank, but where they are poly tanks, how do you protect them? And how does this product fit into the protection of that? So I think in the summary, it needs to be a more engaged approach. This is only the start, but I would have thought to open the discussion. And I think that there may be already forums that we could connect to, or the company can connect to say, hey, you already have a workshop that is the next application of how Bell is applied, or the next discussion about certification processes. And it'd be great, like if CFA and those others were in a position to even lead that discussion. And I go back a step even further, and it goes into the insurance discussion. It's not just about fire protection. This is about making communities resilient. So when a fire moves through the area, we don't have communities that lose everything, because the impact of the individuals, the family, the neighbourhood is so destructive and got such a long reach. So it's not about the day of the fire alone. The impacts and consequences are so far reaching. So anything we can do to harden up infrastructure, structural protection, is got to be a good thing. And again, I think this is part of the next solution of a practical application in an innovative way to do that. So let's somewhere along the way support how we connect to the fire engineers, particularly local government building inspectors and the fire agencies themselves.
Kristy,
if I could add on to that as well. Sorry.
Please do.
Yeah. So and then I'll jump to Justin. So you're always going to have a surveyor or a certifier involved in the process, and so it's educating them in the first instance of the option to use the FIRECOAT paint system, and providing all the documentation. And there's no hesitation. There's nothing to hide. There's plenty of test reports, advice documents, application documents on how the product complies. And so it's a matter of just packaging that together along with your builder or your the person who's going to be applying the paint to the system. So packaging that up, putting a bit of a matrix on how every component of your building will comply, handing that to your surveyor and letting them evaluate that, and then yes, absolutely, engaging with the authorities with the bulk of information on compliance. Justin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just quickly, Kristy, I was just going to say it's an education process to get people like CFA, RFS on board. They've got to be 100% comfortable in their decision making. What I can say is these case studies like Falls Creek really add to that, support for the product. And if I can, in an encouraging way, just talk quickly about my experience in California and our long-term collaboration with CAL FIRE. They actually operate a independent testing service. So they actually took our product away, put it in their own conditions and tested it under their own compliance requirements. And they actually run an approved product list. So you could imagine walking into a Bunnings and there's a list of approved fire products that CAL FIRE are happy to put their name behind. I think that's hopefully where we're going to head in Australia as well, and we'll have similar sort of rating systems. They're very, very advanced in actually going door to door, and what they call is home hardening, and they enforce regulatory requirements they call it improving your defensible space, and we see us fitting into that defensible space strategy really well, not just in paint. I did see a couple of comments come up about windows and things like that. So when I touched on a various suite of products that are coming, we look at a holistic approach to fire attack, and that includes embers, that includes intense heat, various ingress points like windows, doors, garages, all those sorts of things, and gutters and roofs and things like that. So it's a all-encompassing process and product suite that we plan to release slowly, but they're all there. They've been proven. They've all been patented globally. So just watch this space. But the FIRECOAT coatings are the first ones on the shelf.
It's going to be an exciting few next years for FIRECOAT, Justin. I have another question here that's come in, which I think, Ben, this one might be for you. Will builders need to have a performance solution report to be able to use this product to meet bushfire risk reduction requirements as part of the National Building Code?
Yeah, fantastic, nice and easy. No. As I highlighted before, this product has been developed for application under the prescriptive criteria they're deemed to satisfy. So it's not a performance solution. You don't need to go down additional pathways. Within Australia, we have a clear structure of products and compliance, and it's been tested in accordance with the requirements of Australian Standard 3959, which is the bushfire requirement, and so away it's gone with it and passed up to about 40. So it's ready to go on that front. Just got to follow the instructions. And as Justin highlighted previously, you need to have a minimum of 2 coats on there. You need to check the application, make sure everything has been completed. There are qualified painters out there that can follow that process for you.
Another couple of questions have come through about materials relating to the paint. Will FIRECOAT provide steel sheeting certificate, and also how does the paint work with timber, with sealed timber?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just jump on that one. So there's been extensive testing on steel protection as well. You need the right undercoat. So the undercoat, it's an adhesive layer on and protective layer to the steel, and then the paint goes onto the undercoat itself, and then you can put whatever top coat that you want with it. So there's been fire testing for fire resistance level on steel, and it certainly can be put into that. I guess one of the key factors is that talk to FSI about particular applications where there's been a lot of guidance done already, and if need be, they'll click a comment over to myself, and I can provide direct reply. Stained timbers, once again, there's a great adhesive level. It's been used. It was actually tested on a very soft timber, and so going up to hard timbers and better woods with it, that they only improve the situation. But also it's gone through extensive weathering testing as well. So Alan, I'll jump onto that one as well. Insofar as that part of the rules about testing is that you have to weather the product. So it's definitely gone through an aging process that simulates up to around 10 years, and then is tested after it's gone through that aging, and it performs perfect on there. And all the testing has been structured based around that aged process with it. So there's a lot of application. It sticks like glue, it's very robust on the front. There's a lot of variations in which you can stick it to, and there's the technical team within FSI that can certainly help you out on that front.
I have another question here for Justin. What was your response when you went to America, to California, with this product after their recent fire issues? Were they aware of it? Obviously you've had University Southern California, Berkeley, but the fires became an impetus to look for products like yours.
Yeah, sure. We have been a bit of a hidden secret in the US. We've been, because we wanted to be bulletproof, as Ben was talking about, in terms of all conditions. It takes years and years of testing. If I can share a secret, our final paint product is version number 138. So we go back and forth from the laboratory and testing environments and manufacturing to get it perfectly right. So no, they weren't fully aware. When we partnered with UC Berkeley and their disaster resilience lab there, we've done extensive work with CAL FIRE to fine tune the applications and environments that it will work and will withstand. I guess getting it available to the community, which is what you're getting at. Cracking Ace Hardware is a pretty big deal. They're the 5th largest franchise group in the world. I think something like 7,000 stores across the US. And to convince the executives from Chicago, we had to pretty much go head to head. So any fire-related paint was put to the test in front of the CAL FIRE teams and put up against ours, and ours performed exceptionally well. So now they know about us. If you go to our website, you'll see the support we are actually getting from ACE, even on the YouTube channels. That one of the key franchisees in California, I think he owns something like 6 or 8 stores. He actually agreed to even put it on his own home in the hills of California because he believes in it so much, and he's actually created like a mini advertisement for us. So highly supportive. I guess the proof's in the pudding. If one of our methods is to actually show a sample and pull out a Bunsen burner and burn it in front of people, get them to scrape it off, burn it again, scrape it off, burn it again. And when you see it in real life, and you'll see on the videos, it does tell the story really well. So we put it up to the most extreme conditions, and to survive 3 flamethrowers all at once. If I could share another story, when I overheard one of the Cal fire chiefs say this product's going to put us out of a job. So that's how excited they are about it, and where they can see the applications, and going through the horrors that you saw street to street to street in Altadena and Pacific Palisades. Anything that could stop that, and what Craig was talking about, the conflagration, house to house to house. If one street it actually stopped, you'd probably not have this continual loss of assets going through.
Yeah.
So
we have our own embedded cultural memories here in Australia too, which Craig referred to. It does impact the culture of a city, of a state. That just
I just want to add on to that as well. Sorry, just one last thing is that not only has I know we've got short time, but not only has the the testing been done to the structured process within Australia of exactly what is needed. FIRECOAT has been tested to real life events as well, where as Justin was alluding to, that the testing that's been done over in the California for Cal Fire, but also in Australia as well, where flamethrowers have been thrown at it, real bushfire situations and scenarios, not just a test arena, but actual major exposure, and it's proven itself to practical solutions on there as well. So there's great real data that comes out on its performance.
And before we all go, because it is a work day and everybody has to go back to work, I do urge you to stay on and watch a short video that we have, which is an example of those fire burning tests in California. So you can bear witness to some of that and see how the product is tested against common building materials used in the United States. And I did want to say that everybody who participated today, and thank you again, will receive a recording of this webinar. If you have any further questions, please respond and we can answer your questions, or you can submit them to us through the contact form on the website, which is firecoat.com.au, and members of our team will get back to you as soon as we can. Once again, thank you all for joining us here today. I know that I've learned a lot, and Craig Lapsley, James Telford, Ben Hughes-Brown and Justin Rooney, thank you so much for your time, your insights and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you.
The heartbreak that comes with fires is global. When we face these wildfires, they are dramatic in terms of what they can do to homes and lives.
We've all experienced the significant catastrophic effects, and if we haven't directly experienced it, then we know somebody who has.
The only weapon of choice that a homeowner has to protect their home is water. So we hope to change that and create a system of different fire retardants and coatings that are highly affordable, that can definitely protect or increase radically the chance of protecting your home against a wildfire.
I work for a company by the name of Flame Security International. We're an Australian company that does fireproof products. Our product, FIRECOAT, is a water-based coating. It can be rolled, sprayed or brushed.
We're here in Corbell in Northern California. It's a beautiful location. You only have to look around and see, I guess, the risks and the beauty that exists here, but what could happen if a wildfire came through here.
The purpose of today's event is to evaluate a fire-resistant coating that is coming to market in the United States.
A scientific lab will only go so far. This is a true representation of a safe, controlled environment which we can simulate a wildfire scenario and see how the buildings and the material react.
So we have 6 structures. They have T111 siding, which is a typical siding that's used in California. 2 of them are controls. The rest of them are treatments, either interior, exterior, and then we have one that we're calling the Armageddon House, which has all the products on it.
In order to replicate real wildfire scenarios, we have a series of flamethrowers and hay and other construction materials and grasses, and so we're going to ignite those, and we're utilising a lot of thermocouples and a series of other instruments that we're measuring, so we can actually compare that to what is actually happening in a real wildfire situation.
Post-fire tests, we now can actually see the way in which the paint has reacted. We call this an intumescent. It's an expansion capacity. So the paint actually forms like a pillow. It expands, and that expansion is actually what protects the structure and the walls and the doors from the actual fire front. We equally see that with the membrane over the window. It has also expanded.
Scraping forward here, we can see that, the underlying material that's been protected has not been charred. There's no heat in any of this. So with respect to this, we see virtually no damage.
It's taken us, 138 versions to get this paint right, to pass these strict certifications and to be up to the challenge of what we're facing, on a daily basis now.